So I can't stay away from First Kings. I was reading the story of Obadiah again with Elijah, and then I got into the altar. Really, what I had been thinking all along was that there was some kind of power in the verse, for there is the sound of the abundance of rain. I'm not wrong here, but here's what I got from today, just rereading 1 Kings 18. At the beginning of it, Elijah tells Obadiah, "Go and show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain upon the earth." So this is huge. For 3 years, there had been no rain or dew. God didn't tell Elijah when the drought would end. So how many times had he prayed for God to send the rain? Restore the joy, remove the pain. If you don't come, all hope is lost. These are words from a song by Kirk Franklin and Men of Standard. If you don't come, all hope is lost. We trust in the cross. Send the latter rain. Well, what does that mean? That we will fail if you don't send that latter rain. Land is dry. Rain on me. Give me a shower. Shower down on me. Rain on me. Our bodies are weak, and we will fail if you don't send the latter rain. So spiritually, just like physically, we need God to rain, because otherwise we're just too weak to make it. It looked like God's hand had been removed for these last 3 years as things got progressively worse. It had become a dry and brittle place where destruction could happen so easily and spread so quickly. God knew when the rain would come, but the people didn't. They had to continue to hold on as more things were taken from them and their hopes and dreams dried up. That's all it took for the rain to come. For Elijah to tell Ahab. That's all it took. Think how easy it was to bring the rain. Why didn't God tell him to do that before? I'm sure he'd spent countless hours, days, weeks, and months begging for the rain and for God to have mercy on his children and remember his promises to these children. Why did it take that long? That's what happens in my spiritual walk too. Why are you taking so long? What is the holdup? Am I doing something wrong? Do I need to say something or do something? No. Really what it is because everything needed to be aligned and ready for God to move. If it had come any sooner, God would not have been given complete credit. And Ahab and the people may not have been ready for what they needed to do. Obadiah shares traits with Joseph in Genesis. They were trustworthy men who found favor with the ruler of the country. What made them so appealing? Godly men under men who worship idols. Their honesty, their integrity, loyalty, and their character. Even evil people recognize someone who's legit, and they can respect them. A simple command: go. Tell Ahab that I'm here. Obadiah goes off on a rant for which he describes how thoroughly they've searched for him. As soon as I'm gone from here, the Spirit of the Lord shall carry thee whither I know not. Ahab will come, and I won't know where you are, and he's going to kill me. The outcome looks bleak and without hope. Nevertheless, I have been the Lord's servant since I was a kid. I don't have a choice in the matter, even though it could mean certain death for me. He then goes on to remind God. Really, he tells Obadiah, but really he's reminding God that he's made great sacrifices for him, like God hasn't considered this before, like God had forgotten what Obadiah had done. Don't you feel that way sometimes? Don't you see? Don't you see? Don't you remember all that I've done for you? Obadiah thinks he's being set up for his own death. Elijah reassures him. And then when Ahab comes and actually sees Elijah, here's what happens. Ahab tries to put all the blame on Elijah for the trouble they're experiencing. Not so. Elijah retorts, it's all because you and your cronies are disrespecting God. Bring me 450 prophets of Baal. Bring that number, because that number is a confirmation of God's promise that Canaan is the Israelites' inheritance. It is no coincidence that he said, you need to bring me 450 of the prophets of Baal. And I missed this earlier, 400 prophets of the groves. That's for the worship of Ashereth. And 400 is significant because it equals the subject of bondage. So he's going to be talking about the promised land and about the bondage. Okay, God is ripping apart the bondage and freeing them to live in their promised land. When you follow Christ, you have the opportunity to live free. It's a promise for you, and you can live without all of the things that should pull you down or could pull you down or would pull you down. He's ripping down all the idols and false ideologies, Elijah is, that have encompassed the people when he rebuilds the altar. The God that answers by fire is the one that they're going to serve. God says that he is an all-consuming fire, and he will burn up every impurity so that only he remains, because he's a jealous God, and he wants only to worship him. And so fire means he's going to show up. It will be obvious which one is truly God. And fire is used to change and to transform things. Elijah revives, restores, repairs that relationship between God and the people. And then after the fire and the sacrifices are ate up, he says, "Get up, eat and drink, for there's the sound of the abundance of rain." So the sound of a great pouring out, the stopping of the drought, the replenishment, the restoration is what he's saying. It's coming. You've been waiting for so long. You've been so hungry, so thirsty, and you've been praying and fasting and seeking God. It's time. It's time to rejoice, for the Lord draweth nigh. And it's time to replenish yourself, because God's about to show up. So Elijah, he says all this with full confidence, and then he goes and he prays. He declares the sound of the abundance of rain. God's going to show up, and God's going to pour out who he is and all his goodness, all his grace, all his love, all his mercy. And then he goes and prays. Interesting. Sometimes I just expect to have everything just come together and to move. But that is not how this goes. And the more that I read here, the more that I see that we work together. God works through us. And that this isn't just, hey, send this down for me, please, right now. So I don't have to do anything. We are works in progress. Without works, faith is dead. So we do our part by talking to God and by allowing him to use us in all of this. Isn't that interesting that he still needed to pray after God showed up and put the fire on there and ate up all the sacrifice and ate up all the water? So our job with prayer is never finished. We are always to be seeking after God, asking things of him. Not because we can't do it on our own, but because he's God. And God is amazing and awesome. That is so cool.